Welcome back, everybody. This is our episode on... Wait, what is our title?
Endless TBR, reading challenges, and book burnout.
All right, so I am looking at it. I was just wondering if that's the title.
We are Book Dragon Banter. We're so glad you're here. I mean, if something else comes up that's snappier or funnier, then maybe we'll change it. But at the moment, that's what I got because I wasn't asking ChatGPT.
Hello, everybody. You're here for our episode on your Endless TBR, reading challenges, and book burnout. And I can't wait to share with you guys some of my opinions. It is my favorite thing to do. All right, so we have with us today our lead host. This is Zinzi Bree.
Hey, guys.
Then you've got Sage Moreaux.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm Katherine Suzette.
This is an explicit podcast. We don't really swear. That's not what it's explicit for, but we do get into some heavy topics from the books that we're reading. Just a heads up.
For another heads up, be forewarned that there may be spoilers for books that you haven't yet read. You will find those titles listed down in our show notes.
We had a little bit of a conversation about this not too long ago, and now I'm completely blanking if it was in our podcast or if it was out of my writing group. But I made the comment that my TBR is endless because it will not end until I'm dead. The day that I die, I will still be finding new books that I want to read that when I'm dead, I can't. So do you guys, for you, with your endless TBR, how much of a concentrated effort do you make to actually knock stuff off? Or is it just you're constantly adding and you maybe not ever get to the books actually on it?
Yeah, great question. I'm constantly adding, but I am such a mood reader that I'm adding it for later whenever I'm in the right mood for it. So I add it because it sounds really, really cool in the moment, but I don't want to read it right now, or I don't have time right now. And I assume that when I get into the mood, I will come back to it. But I did have a friend once upon a time who would only add 2 or 3 books to their TBR at a time, and she would read those actual books and wouldn't add more to her actual TBR until she completed them. It was the strangest thing for my brain to try to wrap around it. I don't think I said that phrase right. Just somebody who actually stayed on their TBR and used it how we think it's supposed to work.
I am such a book hoarder, like a book dragon, right? So I'm such a book hoarder that the thought of only putting a couple of titles on my list at once gives me like a panic attack. Because what about all those books I might forget to write down and then somehow miss, never be able to read because I didn't write them down at the time? My list is so long, and I keep a couple of different TBR lists. My primary one in my journal where I have nerded out and rewritten it all in color coordinated and by genre, which I will throw a photo of that up on our socials if you guys want to check it out. But I also have another list on my Goodreads account where if I find titles online, I will add it there. And at some point, maybe I'll marry the two. That one's probably considerably longer, but I refer to it less. But I did go to the library the other day and came home with a stack of books this much. And I was and I wish I could read them all today because maybe one of them is For She Is Wrath, which is for our book club. But the others were not on, maybe one of them was on my TBR, but the others were not. And they just looked good and I couldn't help myself. So yeah, it is a problem for me.
Something I've started doing to grow my TBR because it's a monster and needs to be fed. And I feed it when I go to the library because often I'm with my kids and I have to hold my daughter's hand. I can't just have both arms full of books. And also I read primarily through listening to audiobook, although now I'm doing more ebook or trying. Physical books are the rare one for me. Anyway, so if I see a physical book that I'm ooh, I'm intrigued by this title, I'm intrigued by this cover, I'm intrigued by the concept, I take out my phone and I take a picture of it. So I have in my phone a whole section of it that is just books with the cover and the author title easily seen. So I can be that one, okay, I'm going to go look for that as an audiobook or an ebook so I can start seeing if the library has a digital copy so that I can go read it. There's also, I have lists on Pinterest. I have lists on Goodreads. I have lists on Fable. I think a physical handwritten list is the only one I don't have. No, I do, because anytime in our writers group, someone is you should read this book, then I'm writing it down from there. So I take it back. Even my schedule has books in the margin to add to my TBR.
Yeah. It is kind of like you said that it's going to be reading off the TBR and books that I randomly acquire on the TBR till the day that I die. Because it's like, that's a sad thought. Then I won't be reading books on this plane of existence any longer.
What are you going to miss most about life? Books and the people you love.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that question.
I don't have an answer either.
Sorry, I just got the mental image of when Sage dies, we're going to bury her with the TBR pile.
Yeah.
We'll find a cavern, put her in there, put all the books into, and enshrine her.
Oh, I really love those flowers made out of book pages.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
That would be nice.
Okay. So we're just planned Sages in my funerals. Everybody donates books and book pages.
Except
I'll just take the book.
Well, no. I would want the reverse at my funeral. I would want, okay, here's, my casket's over somewhere in the corner. I don't care. I don't care about my body. But mine is, I'm going to be like, all right, you have to get all of my favorite books, buy a bunch of copies of my favorite books.
Ooh.
And like when you go to a wedding, you have a wedding favor. When you go to my funeral,
Yes.
you get to walk away with one of my favorite reads.
But the question is, would it be one of the books that you published?
Oh,
One of your future published books?
I hope so.
And to
I hope I
clarify,
still like my own books.
my funeral will actually be me in a boat out on the water with the burning arrow
Yes.
shot.
By
But I
Game.
could be full of books in
Ooh,
the
so
boat
flowers.
to
What
burn
do you want?
easily. But it's,
Both.
I don't know, that's too close to book burning, so maybe not.
Yeah, okay, but
Okay.
if you've already had people tear them up and they do Project Day and they make these book flowers, then maybe it's not so bad.
Well, you know how supposedly in the publishing industry, if a book doesn't sell, there's just like tons of backlog copies of a book.
Mm-hmm.
It could be all of those books of mine that didn't end up selling. Although who knows, maybe after my death, then all of my books would become so much more valuable.
Your death will make headlines and everybody will be like, I need to go read my favorite. Do we need a death trigger warning at the beginning too? Be like, hey, by the way, we do talk a little bit about funerals and death at the beginning of this one, or is that covered in our... Because it's not like that's an explicit thing. That's just a trauma.
So I think my family members that might listen might need to know that in advance. Heads up, guys.
All right. We talked a little bit about our endless TBR and the fact that we are not the kind of readers that will ever finish it. It will be truly endless until we die. And then I want to hop over to, I'm really excited about this topic, which is reading challenges. To start this off, though, I want to say, as a reader, if you read one book a year, awesome, great. If you read 100 books a year, awesome, great. If you read 1,000 books in a year, I want to know. But awesome, great. Like there's no judgment. Read as much as you want, however you want. If you're an audiobook reader, yes, that counts. If you are a short story or a novella reader, like if that counts for you, that counts. I like reading challenges that you get to set the rules. So in any of this that we are talking about, it only counts if it counts for you. You don't have to go ask the internet's opinion. You don't need anybody's approval to be like, oh yes, I succeeded at this. It's for you.
Yeah, and if it's fun, not a stress.
Yeah.
Please don't be reading like, I have to read this book because it goes on my, contest or challenge here.
If you're reading our book club books because you feel like, oh, this is a challenge, I'm joining a book club, if that takes the fun out for you, don't do it. Only read if it's
100%.
Only do these kind of stuff if it's fun for you. Now, for me, reading challenges are fun for me. I get my little dopamine hit of going on to Goodreads and doing, I think this year, my personal challenge was just to read 60 books, maybe, for the year, which I absolutely knew I would be able to read because that is not, it was much lower than my normal goal for a year. And I made that choice because I was like, I'm going to be really busy this year writing my book, so I'm not going to have time to read as much because I try not to read other people's words and have their voices in my head when I work on my own stuff. So I knew at the beginning of this year, I got to make this goal smaller.
What's your average normally?
Oh, most years I have a goal of 100. I think the highest, I had one year on Goodreads that maybe the goal was 120, and I think that particular, whatever my highest one was, I know I didn't meet it. I came in under by like less than 10 books. But yeah, I do not consider myself a super reader, but I don't actually know what the, like, is
I feel like that's a lot of books because that's like 2 books a week or more, 3 books a week, which I feel like is like if it's 150, that's basically 3 books a week, which is a lot. It depends obviously on the length of book that you're reading. And if you're listening in audio and you can speed it up, that sometimes works. Do you count graphic novels, that kind of thing?
I do count graphic novels personally.
My goal is usually around 75 for the year. And the way I do it is I have in my journal near my TBR list, I draw a little bookshelf and I fill in the titles as I go. And I'll share that too. I can usually get 50 to 75 book spines on my little drawing of my shelf. So that's my personal challenge. And then if I'm going to read more, I'll just make a new page and do another bookshelf. But that's usually I'm usually between 50 to 75, depending on how many of those are like these epics that are 600 pages or whatever, because that slows me down a little bit.
I have a request. Sage, can you make template of this? Because I want this for me. I want a coloring page to color in like this. And I would really love to have a template version of this. Like I could download it into my digital calendar. I could print it out. I could stick it in my journal, whatever that is, however I go about this. But I really want to do this bookshelf challenge with you.
Yes, I will 100% do that. I will post it on our socials for anyone who is interested. They can grab the link and download that. That's fun for me. And I love a drawing project to make me feel like I'm productively being creative and not writing when I need a break.
Well, and I requested it, so it's all better.
Add that to our to-dos.
I want to hear more about, because I only have like my personal challenge, and I have participated in, I think it was PBS's Great Read, where it was books that were nominated for best books ever. And it was like ran the gamut so hard. I think Twilight was probably on there, but then also like,
Moby
The Great Gatsby and Moby Dick, and then modern classics also.
At least The Great Gatsby is short.
Exactly.
We need to have an episode on like classics.
A number of them. I never completed it. I will admit that now. I have the paper somewhere laying around. To me, it's like a lifelong challenge. Because some of the books were like, maybe I'll get there, maybe I won't. And that was maybe even in 2020.
War and Peace. That's the long book. I don't know why in my brain that's the book. At some point I will audiobook it, obviously. But that's the one that makes me like a reader.
Serious reader.
Yeah, serious reader. Thank you. I was like, what is that? What am I even trying to... A serious reader. And I really need to replace that with a fantasy book. So maybe I'll have to find like the Brandon Sanderson series. Maybe the Mistborn series or his Way of Kings. Make
Mistborn.
that my new like...
If it wants to be hot, I
series.
mean, I think that's going to be like a 9-book series. Mistborn is 3 or 4. What level of interest you have in being a super serious fantasy reader? But I did find that once I got into the Way of Kings, it was hard to put down.
Yeah.
Even though it's super epic.
Sage, you're like, Way of Kings. And I'm like, Mistborn.
Yeah, Mistborn is great. I loved that one. It's super good. But I feel like it's a little bit of an easier read. So if I haven't read War and Peace. Have you read that?
No, I've tried multiple times, but this is why I think we should have a classics-oriented episode at some point, because my opinion of classics is really just that they became really popular or influenced society for some reason, just like Twilight, but that doesn't necessarily mean they need to be on this classics list because they are somehow really amazing and really good and really thought-provoking, and they changed us for the positive. So I have opinions.
Oh, great, because I also have opinions, and it sounds like my opinions might be different from the ones that you just said. So, although it might be on a case-by-case basis for those books. A future episode to stick around for. So, we talked a bit about annual goals. Katherine, do you have an annual goal that you keep track of or aim for? Because you do like a book a day or something ridiculous, don't you?
Close. It depends, right? Sometimes I wake up in the year or the month or the week or whatever, and I'm like, I'm going to set a goal. And you know what? Those goals never work for me. I don't know if it's something in my brain or whatever, but I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to surpass that 300. There's no problem. So why set the goal? And that said, I read in all the formats. So I listen to audio and I listen at 2 times speed. And I reread books too. In my brain, I count that to a certain extent. Okay, I'm like fully listening to it again. and sometimes with different purposes. Like I'm rereading a book right now that was written by a trio of authors. And so when I reread it, I see all these layers and layers of things that they built in. And that makes it fascinating and interesting for me. So I count that as a new read. But it's not a new book. So I say approximately one a day because that does work out that way. I also read a lot of graphic novels, but it's really hard to count those unless the series is finished and the book is finished. So it's hard to know what to count and what not to. And I think these days, a lot of readers count audiobooks as a read, quote unquote, even though you're listening to it and maybe passively absorbing it at a lighter level than you would if you were reading the actual words. So there's less judgment around that perhaps than there was a decade ago. But that is my main form of consuming the books, because whatever it is that I'm doing, I've got a book.
I almost never listen to audiobooks, and I do sometimes, and I enjoy it, but for some reason, I think I'm just really a visual person, so I mostly am reading on paper or on my Kindle. But if I do listen to an audiobook, I'm always like, it's more intermittent, so I don't ever feel like because I won't sit down and listen to an audiobook. It feels like I have to do it while I'm moving around, or I'm in the car, or I'm walking the dog. I worry about having too many days in a row where I don't get a chance to listen or something like that. So I don't end up jumping on that as often. But I actually think it's mostly because I like to not be distracted by things visually while I'm listening, to just be looking at the words, and that way I see the pictures in my head and I'm not thinking about anything else.
It's more of like a deeper read to me when you're fully absorbed in all the sensory ways with the book. And I love that too. And the reason I know I read a book a day, no matter the format, is because even back in high school and prior to that, I would genuinely go to the library once a week and walk out with the books up to the chin that you can't quite keep hold of. And the librarians know you're coming and they all know your name kind of thing. And they're like, oh, wow, okay, you're one of those. Yes, I was one of those. And then I would have all of the books that I purchased, because I can't walk into a bookstore without purchasing books. Can't walk by it. I can't do anything. It's like I had to have blinders on to not go into a bookstore and buy something. And I used to sleep with all of the books on my bed. It's so weird. But like half of my bed was me, half of my bed was books. So like think roll over onto a big pile of books. Oh, okay. And then I just wake up and start reading again. That was my life. So I know that I have been a voracious reader of all formats since I was really, really young.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, hot tip for when you go to the library and you've got a bunch of books, it's a box bag that you use for groceries, which is designed to be able to carry cans and a lot of heavy weight. But you take out the bottom and it collapses down. Like, just keep that in your car. So when you go to the library, you can pull out this bag that when you're walking around and picking your stuff, it can be flat. And then when you're at checkout, here you've got it. It's meant for heavy stuff. Load it in there. And that's much easier to walk out. Versus I've seen this where, having grown up in a homeschool family from a large family, bringing a laundry basket and just loading up the books in a laundry basket and walking out of there, because so many kids, so many books, and that's just easier to carry. Especially if they're like a ton of little picture books and you've got little kids.
We were in walking distance to our library, and the kids and the dog and I will walk down to the library, and I will park the dog outside, and partially as a way to keep us from staying in the library all day, because there's other things to accomplish, and also to get the dog to have a walk. But then we have to carry the books home. So now my kids are a little older. They can carry their own bag of books. But when they were young, it was kind of like a way to limit. I think I remember going and pushing the library's limit on how many books to check out because of the picture book element when the kids were littler. But now, and they still love they'll read chapter books, but they still love a ton of graphic novels. So the books are heavy. And I'm always like, nope, you got to carry your own books. So bring a bag. I don't actually want one of those giant bags, because then the walk home, it's uphill, would be terrifying.
Okay. So outside of just here's your standard reading goal, any book counts, have you done reading challenges before? The only ones that I can think of were specifically ones from my library. And again, they would either be read books off of this specific list, read a couple of books that are an award winner or a new release, Or it would be, reach a specific number during the summer. Right now, my library has, for adults, it's like read 3 books for the summer and win your t-shirt.
Yeah, I've done the library challenge, definitely, of reading. At our library, it's like read this many days and enter a raffle. Once you hit like 30 days of the summer that you've read, then you enter the raffle and you read 30 more days, you get another entry, something like that. Sometimes they give a free book, which is like super motivating to me. And then I did do the PBS Great Reading Challenge, like I mentioned. I'm pretty sure it was through PBS. But other than that, I have not. I'm more like Katherine. I'm a mood reader. So the idea of signing myself up to do something that I don't feel in the mood for, like I don't want to read a book that I don't necessarily feel in the mood to do it. So I think that holds me back. But I am very curious about the hardest book reading challenge of your life.
Yeah, the hardest book reading challenge you'll ever do. We will get to it, I promise. I have a list of some of the challenges that I came across besides just trying to do an annual goal, and that is A to Z. So that's reading a book that either something in the title or the author's name is one of the letters from the alphabet. So that's, 26 letters there if you're doing it in English. There's the rainbow cover challenge. So whether that's your 7 books because you're trying to Roy G. Biv your books and you're trying, I feel like Katherine, looking behind you at the Outlander books, there's enough of them that are a different color. That's like part of you could hit some of your Roy G. Biv right with that series. Yeah. There's focusing on prize winners. There's doing around the world. So reading a book that either takes place in or is written by an author that lives, I don't know how you would do this for Antarctica, but like every continent or every country, or here in the US, like I would consider doing a book challenge that was a book from every state, but I'd probably go for not necessarily written by an author that like lived in Maine. I would look for a book set in Maine.
Yeah.
Even if it was briefly, and then the character, because fantasy, it was like a portal fantasy where they started out in Maine and then they portal fantasied somewhere else.
The book that's based in Antarctica, I think it's even titled Antarctica, by Kim Stanley Robinson. He's a science fiction and like climate-based writer. Every continent, because you can include that one.
I saw somebody, when I was researching some of this, someone in the comments was saying there's a part of... No, it's not. There was a fantasy book that I was like, that's on my TBR. And part of it, they visit Antarctica or something for some reason. And so you could check it off. I feel so it would be easier to do fantasy, but also do geographical if you're doing like paranormal books that are contemporary fantasy. Like that would get me to read more of those, because I tend not to read contemporary fantasies. I usually am reading fantasies that are a whole other world setting. One of the ones was book specific chapter a day. And I heard that this was particularly because Dracula is set up as in epistolary. So you'd be reading one letter a day in the month of October leading up to Halloween for spooky season. And I was like, okay, that's like a really easy, mild book challenge that would be fun to do. There was Dracula, and I forget what the other book was when I was seeing that as a chapter a day challenge. And I'm someone who grew up reading devotional books where like you do 1 page a day that's a prayer or has quotes or is some theological thought. I currently have a year with C.S. Lewis and a year with Aslan. For the next time I start doing that again, I'm going to go through those because I love C.S. Lewis. I love Narnia. But I also really love some of his other books as well, so I didn't want to just limit it to Narnia with Aslan. Oh, so another one is doing an author backlist. So that's picking an author and reading their entire collection.
I do that not as a challenge, but when I discover an author I really love, I will often then go back and try and reread all of their, depends on how many they've written. But if there's, I might try and go back and reread all or most of their books. But I don't do it as a challenge to myself, more just because I am appreciating their writing style.
Yeah. So doing an author backlist is something that I would really like to do. And I would make a point of doing it not just as a reader to do the challenge, but as a writer, I'd want to have my critical hat on, my lens on of how are they structuring it? How do they make it funny? How do they do this? I would love to do that with Diana Wynne Jones, Because I've read Howl's Moving Castle, the 2 companion books, and the Tough Guide to Fantasyland. But there's several other of her books that I haven't gotten to yet that I would love to. I love books that have whimsy, and she's kind of the epitome of that for me. So she would be someone that I would read her backlist and study it, and study her and study her books. And there's a couple other authors that I would also put on the list. If I was going easy on myself, I would pick an author who was alive, who only had a couple books. But if I was going to commit, then I would pick R.I.P. dead author to do their whole catalog, because I know they're not writing anything new, and I can actually check, I did it. I've read all of what they've put out into the world that is publicly available.
I really enjoyed what you were saying about reading an author and then studying them. I've really enjoyed finding an author that I love and then reading their very first book that they ever published to see. And it actually is a big ego boost for me, because it's like, okay, not that the books were bad, but there's definitely a difference between an author's first book. Like even Brandon Sanderson, for example, I read his first book, and it's fantastic, super entertaining, but it's not as nuanced. The writing style isn't as fluid as his more recent novels. And a number of other authors also, I've done that, where I'm like, okay, let's see what their first book was. And it gives me a little okay, my debut novel that I'm working on now, it doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be at this level in order to finish it and move on to the next book, because it will hopefully get to be a better writer as I work.
Brandon Sanderson, so his first published book is also his 13th actual written book, because he had a bunch in the shelf first. So even he's hard to compare to.
Yes. Which is one of the reasons I used him, because his first book is quite good. There are some other authors that I've read that I love their work now, that their first books were slightly less, but I won't go into detail with that.
You even talking about that made me think of the difference between Twilight and The Host by Stephanie Meyer. Those felt worlds away to me as far as writing development. To me, that showed a lot of growth. So there's also the TBR challenge of getting through any books you own. So books that you have already purchased, reading all of those. And for some people, they're like, we have to read all of those before we can buy a new book. And I could never do that challenge. That would break my heart. I would cry. There's authors who are debuting that I want to support. I can't just not. So I could make the caveat of I have to read the ones that I physically have in my house that are physical, but I can still buy new ones that are ebooks or audiobooks or whatever. My husband would probably like that, because that might help with our budget if I took that challenge on. There was another one that is birthday bestseller. So you look up your birthday and you read whatever book that piques your interest, or whatever's, first place on the New York Times best-selling that is from your birthday. Now, having looked this up before, because I was like, oh, that would be interesting. The book that was number one and almost the entire list were a bunch of political thrillers. Almost the whole list on my birthday, which I will not say what it is. And I was just like, this challenge is not for me.
Now I'm going to have to look it up. My birthday is in October, so it might be all horror, and horror is not my taste. But maybe, or it might be self-help books. Who knows? I'll have to look and see.
Yeah.
So maybe mine will be a little bit more fantasy oriented, but honestly, who knows?
Another one that I came across that did appeal to me was called Uncorked Librarian Reading Challenge. And this is one where you're picking a book, and it's a book that is being paired with a movie and a beverage. And they're mostly books that are travel and location focused. So to me, that was, okay, you would read Under the Tuscan Sun and eat Italian and drink a glass of wine and maybe watch the movie after, which is one of my favorite movies. The author has written books on poetry as well. So her writing is lovely. So
that's a fun one. I've done a similar thing with my kids. They are big Percy Jackson fans, and they've read most of Rick Riordan's books, and I've read some. When the Percy Jackson TV show came out, they had read the books, I had read the books, and so we sat down to watch the TV show, and we did all blue food. We made a plate of blue, which is mostly candy, I hate to say, but we did a plate of blue, and there was blueberries. I forced the blueberries on the plate because Percy Jackson's mom would always give him blue food as a comfort thing. And then I think they dressed thematically We've done it for TV or movies before, but I've never done it with a book. So I love the idea of the meal that goes along with the story. That sounds super fun to me.
I would fully reread The Hobbit with a plan of here's a whole Hobbit feast to just, at different points in the book, I get to eat this now because this happened and I get to eat this here. Maybe that would be a fun supplement project of a couple fantasy books. Be like, hey, here's the meals to go with it as you're working your way through.
Or at a retreat or something like that. Like you could do a
Ooh,
themed.
yes.
My mom did what you did, Sage, with A Christmas Carol and a few other things, some Narnia themed and things like that. I was also homeschooled, but only through high school. I was not a fan of all of the various different Christmas Carol movies, but that was one of the ones that we really studied. Charles Dickens, The Great Gatsby, movies like that. And then we'd read the books and then discuss, so do an event-themed day. But I like yours a lot, too. The blue food and the getting dressed up. I'm here for it.
The kids had read the book, so then we did analyze the show. I love to do that kind of thing. Let's read the book and then watch the show or movie and talk about how much better the book is, basically.
Do you have a rule of you have to read the book first before you go see the movie or show if it's an adaptation?
I like a 90% rule. I think 99% rule. I have 2 kids, so for example, my daughter had read The Hunger Games before we watched the movies, but my son had not read them. But he has now, so he's just younger. So yeah, maybe for him, it's 90%, and my daughter, it's higher. There was something recently where we saw the movie and I had not read the book, and I don't remember. Oh, it was The Notebook. My daughter and I watched The Notebook, and I've never read it, and she hadn't read it either. So I was like, we probably should have read the book first, but we didn't.
I enjoyed the Notebook movie. I can't remember if I read the Notebook, but I did read Dear John, I think, and a few of the other Nicholas Sparks books before seeing the movie versions. So another one that I thought was fun was Vintage Scavenger Hunt, which is a cover focus. So you're looking for specific vintage items on covers.
Wow.
Or
like a spyglass or what?
Like a spyglass or... Okay, so if you're into historical fiction, you're looking for who's got a fan, who's got like a little clutch purse, who's got... Or if you're looking for things that are red that are vintage, so like a red balloon or a little red wagon, you can pick your poison. So that's going to bring me over to Herkyed. I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, which is the hardest reading challenge you will ever do, which was created by Q on the YouTube channel Qwerty, which is Quordy. So Qwerty. They created this challenge last year, and it is a bingo board that each of the spots on the bingo board is its own like sub challenge. And this is a bingo board that is 5 by 5, so 25 spaces on the bingo board. And to complete it, you have a year. It usually starts in July. So from July to July, it starts on Q's birthday. And you have to black out the entire bingo board to succeed. This is few people have successfully done it. It is a challenge to try to do, to get you to read more, to get you to have a variety. But success is not actually the point. The different prompts that she had were lovely. And there's also with this bingo board, there is a point system associated with it. So that at a certain point, if you've done enough books that fulfill points requirements, you can redeem your points to like skip a book or to give yourself some grace. So that was like a nice addition to how the board is built. So there's 2 colors on the board. There's purple and white, and I am spacing right now, but one of them is a color where to successfully do the challenge, you absolutely have to do all of the ones that are in purple, but the ones that are in white. But then the opposite color is flexible. You get to decide what challenge things you want on that spot in the board. You don't have to do her created version. So one of the bingo spaces in the challenge is called The Hundreds. You have to read a book that is 100 to 199 pages. You have to read a book that is 200 to 299 pages. You have to, going up the hundreds, up to a book that is 700 plus is the last book to complete. So from 100 to 200, all the way up to 700, one book in each of those hundreds, 7 books. So just that bingo spot is 7 books of varying lengths.
Yeah, and one of them is like over 700 pages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Audiobooks count. So if that's, that's your speed. Another one on the board is the series Staircase, which I really like the idea of this one. So the bottom of the staircase is a standalone. The second of the staircase is a duology. The third is, trilogy, and then a quartet. Or I think on this one, it's just read a series that is 4 or more, and that counts as your last step. But again, that's duology, standalone, trilogy, and then at least 4 or more. So that's 10 books right there. Another one is the Rainbow Challenge. Some of the ones that I really love is she has and these are in the required list, is a diversity challenge where there's different parts of diversity to hit. And there's also one, I think, that's a disability. So you're purposely reading a book that either features a disabled main character or is written by someone who has a disability. Those are worth more points in your point system to give you. So it incentivizes you more to branch out and read books that are diverse, to read books that are by queer writers, to read books that are disability rep. And I love that. I want to expand into all of those and be reading more of those. So I'm excited about those sections of the challenge.
I love that too. I'm thinking that it sounds like a lifelong challenge more than just 1 year. But also, it also feels like a great way. First of all, I love that it's like, here's a great way to read more if you feel a little stalled in your reading, but also to read outside of your, like if you only read fantasy or only read romance or only read historical fiction, only read nonfiction, like pushes you outside of your comfort zone to find some of those titles. That sounds super fantastic.
Yep. I will have in our show notes links to Cordy's stuff, so you can go find this for yourself.
Do you know how many books total, like to complete the challenge, roughly?
No, because I don't know what the minimum is on the books questions that you have to do. And also because if you have spots that you can change your challenge, then their ending list is going to be different. Now, if I was going to pick a challenge to do, if I was going to make my own, I love the 4 seasons. Summer. Oh, so this was one of the other ones that would become the avatar in this year's challenge, which is read a book that has fire, water, wind, and earth, like either on the cover or in the title, which I thought was super fun. My version of that would be the seasons. So reading a book that has spring, summer, fall or autumn or winter, either in the title or obviously on the cover because it's set in that time of year. Ooh. The other one that I would consider doing, and I love 4. 4 is my favorite number. So like anything that's like, here's a 4, here's a quartet, that's my jam. The other one would be the cardinal directions. So a book that has north, south, east, and west in the title would probably be like, that would be a challenge I would go for. I have my recommended book here. Already hits multiple levels of those particular challenges. And, so with the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do is each book that you read can count for 2 spaces on 2 slots in your bingo board. So you could pick East is part of a duology, East and West. And so if I read this, it could be, okay, it counts for the duology because there's 2 books, but it also counts for my alphabet where East is for E and West is then for my W. Each book could count for those things. So that helps make it more doable. And it all makes your brain work hard and think about choosing your books to hit some of these extra beats and gives you that extra incentive to pick up a book that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise because it fits more of the categories you're trying to finish.
If I was going to develop a reading challenge, which maybe I will now because I'm kind of inspired, I think I would do it around magic systems. So, but it's tricky to know how much you would know that just based off reading the spine or the back cover of the book. So that's tricky. But if it's the magic is granted by the gods, or the magic is something that you're inborn with, or magic happens because somebody curses you, or that kind of thing. And also probably some level of magical creatures or types of magical scenarios. I would probably base my challenge around that. So stay tuned. Maybe I'll develop it.
Yeah, listeners, do these concepts we're coming up with are seasonal, directional, and magic systems reading challenges? Would that be something you're interested in? Let us know. maybe we can build them out and release them for you guys. Katherine, can you think of, if you were going to do a reading challenge, what you might, or is you're just like the ultimate read, no time limit, but read 3,000 books?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Confessing, I was looking at the books behind me just to see how long they were, because if you have books that were like, I was thinking about the stair stacking page number thing. It's not a way that I make my decisions with books. And what's on the front cover? Okay, I guess I do make my decision based on that a lot. When I'm need reading, if I see the front cover, that might influence my decision really strongly. But I will not necessarily go, oh, this has a fan on it, or oh, this has a loot, or something like that. Or the page number is really short, or it's really long. But I was looking at the Outlander series, and for some strange reason, this particular version of the series did not print page numbers, which is interesting. I do have the Jonathan Norell book back here, and it's almost 900 pages. You know, it's not impossible to find good books that are out there that are this long without, like...
They're chunky.
Yeah, you don't have to read, for example, War and Peace in order to get a super chunky book. You can read something that you might have already wanted to read. I think Harry Potter is really long. Game of Thrones is really long.
I think I have what would Katherine's book challenge be? And it doesn't have to do with what the books are. It has to be moods. So you would go, okay, I'm happy. This is the book I picked when I was happy. Or this is a book I was sad, I wanted to cry. This is the book that I picked to fill that. Or I was super mad or frustrated, or I want revenge. Here's my revenge book that I read when I was super mad about something. So maybe that's what we'll make for Katherine. It has to do with your mood, and you add in whatever book you found to fill that mood.
Love it.
Amazing. And maybe we could get Sage to design it where you get to color the emoji face instead of like a bookshelf. I love it.
Let's do it.
So now we have 3 new book challenges in the works to add. So once you finish the hardest book challenge of all times, or you'll ever do, you could jump in and maybe one of ours will be ready for you.
Or you can just, if you decide to do the hardest book challenge that you've ever read and you want to take one of your squares that you get to decide what challenge it is, you could stick one of ours in there, or all of ours in there.
Ooh.
Your choice.
Check that off the list and feel really accomplished.
Yep. I had the thought, maybe I will just look back at the beginning, because I have all of the books that I've read so far this year written down. If I look back and just start going, okay, I read this, and just plunk it into the board and like see how far along that I've already technically gotten, and then see what I would have left if I was trying to complete it by January. I'm a little bit tempted to do that. I did also want to mention the Candid Cover website has loads of reading challenges and is updated throughout the year, it seems. I was scrolling on their page for their list of challenges they have. And there's another one. It's the 52 book challenge, but it's not specifically like read a book a week. There are some other parameters. This year, 52 is doing book connections. So if you read... I'm going to pull this out, for example. So if I read East and I decide my connection is going to be the letter T, because T is the letter that the book thing ends with, the next book that I read has to start with the letter T. And okay, that book is The Last Dragon of the East, which is part of our book club. That ends in T, so I can't do that. But maybe I go to, it has a dragon on the cover. So my connection is a dragon on the cover. My next book, the next connection, is that there's a dragon on the cover. And it's 52 books that have a connection to each other.
I love that.
I thought that just sounded like such a fun little way to help. And so this is something, part of the reason I like reading challenges is because as a person with an endless TBR that also gets decision fatigue and gets overwhelmed with all of the options, I like having a reading challenge to help me narrow my options. That makes making the decision easier for me, not harder. So that's an additional plug for why reading challenges sometimes are fun and helpful.
I'm feeling like that 52 book connections could be really great for kids, because I was thinking, this is a nice way for any parents who are listening. Getting your kids to read more is sometimes a struggle for parents, and giving them a fun challenge that is flexible. Because I was thinking, what is the fun reading challenge for, grade school kids or middle school or high school? High school kids, I think, could do a lot of the challenges that we've been talking about. But for younger kids, like how to make it fun. And rainbow covers could be super fun. Seasonal could be super fun. But doing the connections is a great way to like bump up the number of books that a kid is reading and still give them agency over what the choices are, which kids love agency.
Awesome. So for you guys, we talked a bunch about big book challenges, and we did say we were going to talk about book burnout. After you've done your challenge, after you've binged your big series or your 700-page book, what causes book burnout for you guys?
Honestly, it's often the rest of my life that kind of gets in the way when my energy is feeling depleted and I'm feeling overwhelmed and I've already got so many decisions I'm making. I at least pull away from reading books that are super in-depth. Like the world builds that Sage just loves and the political intrigue in fantasy worlds. I would pull away from things like that and go straight over to Zinzi's corner of the world, which is all the cozies and the light fantasy and things like that. I love cozy mysteries. Give me the baker who baked the muffin that killed the muffin man, whatever. I'll go read that cuteness and I'll do that instead. So I don't have book burnout necessarily that keeps me from reading a full book for more than a week or two. But I do have overwhelm in life that burns me out. Then I have to simplify whatever it is that I'm reading, which is part of my mood reader compulsion. So I will pull away from in-depth things for sure.
I get genre burnout more than book burnout. Definitely. One of the things I love is to read a very lengthy fantasy series with many, like more than a trilogy. Like there's so many books in the series. And part of that is because then I'm in the world and all of the world building stuff and character development and magic system and political intrigue. I don't have to learn it. So I've already done the mental hurdle in the first book, and then I can just keep reading the series and I am immersed. It's also, I love the immersion of it. But after that, like the thought of starting a new one is too much. So then that's when I will jump into reading like a mystery or a romance or historical fiction or something less fantasy oriented altogether. I might do like a contemporary fantasy if I've been deep into an epic fantasy world. Outside of that, I might do like a graphic novel if I'm really feeling like I've read a lot. The one time I did get book burnout to where I just didn't want to read at all, which is a feeling I don't usually have, was that for my reviewing job for Common Sense Media, I agreed to read Haunting Adeline, which is a book I would have never picked up. I had heard about it and I was like, oh, maybe I'll check that out at some point out of curiosity because of book marketing, like we talked about before. But I agreed to read it as a reviewer. And I honestly, if I had picked this up, I would have gotten a few pages in and just dropped it because I didn't find the writing style to be particularly interesting. But it is a 600-page book. It is part one of, I think, 2, maybe more. Ends on a cliffhanger, which drives me crazy, but that's a whole other topic. And 600 pages and a cliffhanger, no thank you. But it's got, like, it's basically stalker, rape, excessive violence. There's, like, that's a really big turnoff to me. The way that the relationships are shown is so unhealthy. It's awful. It was so awful for me to have to read it, and it was poorly written. So it wasn't even that interesting. It was like a slog to get through. And it was a slog full of all of these super erotic sex scenes. And I don't mind the erotic sex scenes, but when it's somebody being graphically raped, like that's just not. And then she's like Stockholm syndrome and in love with her rapist. Like that's, to me, is super gross. I don't believe that it should exist in the world. I was happy to review it so that I could at least like let people know what the content was before they dove into it. After I read that, like I couldn't even read. I think I binge watched a bunch of like happy television sitcoms. I couldn't even bring myself to read for like 2 weeks, which was a lot. Like I did pick up like a graphic novel here or there, or maybe I did a reread of an old favorite to get myself back into it. I had never experienced anything like that. And I think part of it was pushing myself through something I would normally would just to put away and not finished. But
I don't know that I've experienced book burnout. I've experienced series burnout with Dungeon Crawler Carl, listening to that as an audiobook and binging through those because that got dark for me and I couldn't live in that headspace. That would be the closest I have. I am far more likely to experience a reading slump after having read a book that I loved. I will purposely not pick up something else for a while so I can just stay there with those characters and the world and the happy ending or whatever it is. And the magic, the dragon. Like, I would rather mentally live there for longer before picking anything else that I'm like, well, I could try this, but it's not going to be as good. And I could try this, but it's not going to be as good. My brain gets stuck on that for a little while until I find some other entertainment that engages my brain and triggers oh, wait, but here's this fun Korean drama with this trope or this fun setup. I'm going to go find a book that has something similar. And okay, now I can re-engage. But yeah, for me, it's a really good book will put me in a slump in the best way.
Okay, I have that too. I call it book hangover. And I either rereading or re-listening, or I find, again, something light and cozy that I don't have to get super involved with mentally or emotionally, and I don't have to track a lot of arcs and things like that. I think the most recent, and like you, Sage, I kind of like a series. So if I go into the cozy realm because I'm in a slump or a burnout, then I'll read something like The Ghost Who is a recent series that I did. It was like back in January, and there are like 30 plus books in this series, and they're all predictable, but they're cute and okay written. I do recommend it for people who like cozies and predictable and ghosts, like some paranormal mysteries and things like that. But it's definitely not one that I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to reread it because it had amazing characters that I'm in love with. I love the development. I love the relationships. I love all these different things. It was more like, it's sweet, it is cute, and it gives me enough to feel engaged, but not enough that I'm obsessed. And that got me up through a recent like hangover or slump. I don't even remember what got me into that one, but essentially I get book hangovers with really good ones all the time, and I'll just start rereading them, or I have to take a break. And I do the same thing with Korean dramas too. Like Korean dramas and graphic novels might be the way that I recover from hangovers.
Yeah.
I notice a lot of times if I'm feeling like in a slump, either I'm sick or when the pandemic started and I was stressed, or like at other points in my life where I've had stressful things going on, I will go back and do a reread of some of my favorite books. Like there's certain books I'll just read over and over again because they're comforting. I know what happens at the end, so there's no surprises. And I love them enough that I don't mind being back in that world with those characters. And that's a good way for me to get over any kind of like reading slump also.
We're going to run through our book recs. So my recommended book for this episode is East by Edith Patow, or Patow. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. It's YA fantasy. It is a retelling of the fairy tale East of the Sun, West of the Moon, which is my favorite fairy tale because your main girl is the hero. She saves the prince. The prince doesn't save her. It also has elements of, is it Greek mythology? Eros and Psyche, like that setup of she sleeps next to him but can't look at him at night. But it's told from multiple POVs, and its setting, this is an adventure story, so there's a good amount of travel. Denmark, Finland, France, Greenland, Iceland, Norway, and Germany. So if you've got some travel, but you want fantasy, and this can tick a lot of boxes in your book challenges. So highly recommend East by Edith Patow. All right, that's my book recommendation.
It's not fantasy, but it was by Nora Sakovic, and I guess it's alternate universe, but it's force-oriented. It's an MM love story, and it's a slow burn. It's really well built. It was very deeply oriented towards character build and character development.
So the series that I'm going to recommend, it is a series, but you can read the first one as a standalone, is Murderbot. It is also not a fantasy, but so good. And the first is, I think most of them are novellas, so they would count as a short book. They're very fun, quick reads, and there's so much to unpack in the books. You can just enjoy them for what they are, but there's also a lot around like mental health and social anxiety and what it means to be human, which is one of the things I love the most about a good science fiction story. And now there's a TV show, so read the book. If you haven't watched the show yet, please read the book. I think you'll enjoy it that much more.
Now that I know there's a TV show, I may or may not.
They're very short and hilarious. I think it's one of the only books in the last couple of years that I've laughed out loud like numerous times while reading.
Yeah, I just had the first one from the library, and I agree with Sage. It's delightful. And well, I have not read past the first one as an audiobook, but it's great. I'm sure you will enjoy it. All right. You can find us on social media. Our links are down in with the show notes. Our book club read is For She Is Wrath by Emily Varga. That will be our next episode, is discussing that. And if you haven't already, give us a rating. We would love to see what you guys are thinking of how we're doing. And the next episode after our book club episode will be all about FMCs, Mary Sue's Chosen Ones and self-inserts, talking about our leading ladies. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is so much fun, and I'm so glad I get to do this with you guys.
So
See you
fun.
next time. Also, bloopers.
Bloopers.
Oh, which is me. Do. Boop. I am a bot. Yep. Okay, hold on. Bloopers. Because I realized I needed to start just having a here's the blooper section warning. Content warning. Hey guys, this is an explicit podcast. There's also, I have lists on Pinterest. I have lists on Goodreads. I have lists. I have wrists, guys. I have lists. The business person in me was like, ooh, we should make that. Sign up for our email list and you'll get Sage's little... But then the reader in me is just like, no, you don't have to give us your email. You just, if you liked us, that means you listened to us. You're already in. You can just go get it. It's on our stuff.
Maybe I'll do the 50 book version for the one-page version for everybody, and the double-page version if you want to subscribe. I would like people to subscribe just out of the goodness of their heart, but I recognize that's not always how it works.
Yeah, sometimes you need that freebie. If we had for this season, our full book club books chosen, or maybe we should get on that so that we can release it and be like, hey, here's our book club list. You can just color in as you read them.
100%. That's fun.
Okay.
2026.
Add that to our to-dos. Can you guys still hear my daughter?
I
As
can
my
totally hear her.
Damn it. Doot. Why is that my processing noise? I don't know. Ooh, another dragon cover. Give me all the dragon books. All of the dragon books. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Oh, I gotta stop the recording. Ah!
Oh!